Hey everybody, Mr. Clarke here. Decided to make a quick video to help you guys understand some of the main concepts of Learning Standard 1, Unit 4, which is our new unit that we're going to be starting on Tuesday the 30th. So I hope you're all doing well out there, and I'm going to walk you through the first few slides of this set of slides, and we'll explain some of the main topics for Learning Standard 1. All right, so when you think about the U.S. economy, Unit 4 deals with what's known as the macroeconomy, which is the big picture. If you think back to when we first started the course, we talked about the difference between micro and macroeconomics. For the most part, we've looked at economics from a micro perspective with monopolies and supply and demand and minimum wage. This final unit is going to look at our economy from the macro perspective, more of the big picture. So instead of looking at an individual state, groups of people, a certain market structure like an oligopoly, monopoly, we're going to look at how the overall economy is doing. And so think of it like a report card. You know, when you guys get your report cards, if you still get them in the mail, however you get them nowadays, think about how you're assessed. You're assessed on your scores on formative exams. In my class, like it's quizzes and in-class work. It's also your summatives, your unit exams. The macroeconomy is assessed in a similar way in that there's certain variables that impact how the economy is doing. So Learning Standard 1 looks at those variables, those topics that either would cause the macroeconomy to move in a good direction or move in a negative direction. So I gave you the example here, like if the school wanted to see how, like if Woodstock North wanted to see how they were doing overall as a school, they would look at things related to student performance, like SAT scores. They would look at PSAT scores. They would look at how often students are coming to school. They would be looking at students' grades. Other variables that are to determine whether or not a school's on the really good end of education or on the wrong end of education. And the same thing can go with any company. When a company wants to gauge how they're doing, they look at certain factors. So the same thing holds true with our economy. And so some of those factors lead into something known as the business cycle. So you have an example of it here. The business cycle works almost like a roller coaster. Just like I use the example, like everyday life, the business cycle goes through ups and downs. Our U.S. economy goes through ups and downs just like any other world economy does. And there are several variables that I list there that help determine whether the economy is on that upswing when things are looking good on the up, or if you're in a nosedive as an economy and things are not looking so good. Things are looking a lot more pessimistic. So those three variables listed there, if you asked any economist, whether here in the United States or elsewhere in the world, they would look at those three factors. They would look at something known as gross domestic product, which is commonly known as GDP. They would look at unemployment, and they would look at inflation. So some might sound more familiar than others. I think for the most part, you guys have a decent understanding of what unemployment means. But we're going to spend time in this unit talking about what is gross domestic product? How is it measured? What are some holes in it? Meaning, is it the best way of determining the health of an economy? And then we're going to do the same thing for unemployment, how it's measured, what does it mean, some limitations of it, and the same thing with inflation. Those three, inflation, unemployment, and GDP. Those are the three variables that influence the health of an economy, our macroeconomy, okay? When times are going good, you have what are known as expansions. Those are also known as economic booms. When the economy has reached that top point, that's known as an apex or a peak. That's think of the economy right before COVID-19 hit. That would be like very early February of 2020 when unemployment was around like 3%. The economy was humming along. It was doing really well. That's an expansion. That's record growth. But when times aren't so good, think of March of 2020 when COVID-19 hits, or think of this past summer when the Delta variant came back, or think of 2008 when the housing market crashed. Those are known as contractions. When the economy is shrinking, contracting, to shrink, that's a time when people are out of work, you're not producing as many goods and services, and so as a result, you have a situation in the macroeconomy known as a recession. So recession, think of bottoming out. That could also lead into what's known as an economic depression. Think of like the 1930s. And so when the economy does bottom out, when you hit the bottom of that barrel, I like to call this like the Toby of the macroeconomy. That's the only picture I could find on short notice there from The Office. Toby is the worst, right? You talk to Michael Scott, Toby is the worst. And that's the worst case scenario for the economy. So make sure on this slide you understand the difference between expansions and contractions. Expansion, to expand, to grow. Times are good. Things are like a bull market. Things are looking up. But in a contraction, a shrinking of the economy, that's a bear market. Things are looking a lot more pessimistic, and people are probably going to be out of work in some cases. And so see if you can fill in the blanks there. This is something we could talk about when I get back. So what I'd like you to do after this, make sure in today's Canvas announcement, if you guys could read the handout on the business cycle. It lists the 3 main goals of the economy, which I summarized in this video. And then it also lists how those goals are assessed, how they're quantified. Quantified means to put into numbers. And this is a preview. It's a good preview of the topics we're going to learn about over the next couple of weeks regarding the macroeconomy. Okay? So by the time the unit is finished, you guys should have a much better understanding of what unemployment is, what GDP is, what inflation is, how they're measured, how economists go about quantifying, putting into numbers those variables, what it means for the economy. We'll also learn about when there's rampant inflation, which is a problem our economy is going through right now, late November of 2021. What do we do about it? How does the economy correct itself? Does our central bank get involved? Does our federal government get involved? What are their tools to deal with unemployment or inflation or GDP? So hopefully this and the handout I gave you gives you guys a good preview of what we're going to cover in LS number 1, and then also for the remainder of the of Unit 4. And make sure you watch the Edpuzzle video from ACDC Econ. And I hope you guys are all doing well, and hope to see you all soon. Take care.